What if I told you there are planets out there with no star at all? Worlds drifting alone through the darkness of interstellar space, untethered from any sun, wandering the galaxy in permanent night. And what if some of those worlds might still be warm enough deep inside to support liquid water? Not from starlight, but from the heat of their own interiors, sustained for billions of years by radioactive decay and the residual warmth of their formation. These are rogue planets, and they may be the most numerous type of planet in the galaxy. The idea of a planet without a star feels like a contradiction. We define planets partly by their relationship to a star. They orbit stars, they're illuminated by stars, they're warmed by stars. A planet with no star seems like it shouldn't exist, or if it does, it should be a frozen, dead rock drifting through the void. But the universe is more creative than that, and the story of rogue planets is one of the most surprising chapters in modern planetary science. Rogue planets form in one of two ways. The first is the same way ordinary planets form, in the disk of gas and dust surrounding a young star. But not all planets that form in those disks stay there. Gravitational interactions between planets, particularly close encounters with massive gas giants, can fling smaller planets out of the system entirely. The ejected planet escapes the star's gravity and continues moving in whatever direction it was traveling when it was ejected, drifting away into interstellar space. This process is thought to have happened in our own solar system during its early history, when the giant planets were migrating and their gravitational interactions were reshaping the architecture of the system. Some models suggest that our solar system ejected one or more planets during this period, worlds that once orbited our sun and now drift somewhere in the galaxy, undetected. The second way rogue planets form is directly from the collapse of a gas cloud, the same way stars form, but without accumulating enough mass to ignite fusion. These objects are essentially failed stars, brown dwarfs at the low end of the mass scale, or planetary mass objects that formed in isolation rather than in a planetary disk. The distinction between a rogue planet formed by ejection and one formed by direct collapse is important scientifically, but from the outside, both look the same. A cold, dark, starless world drifting through the galaxy. How many rogue planets are there? The honest answer is that we don't know, but the estimates are staggering. Some models suggest there could be more rogue planets than stars in the Milky Way, potentially hundreds of billions of them, or even more. If those estimates are correct, rogue planets are not exotic rarities. They are the most common type of planet in the galaxy, and we've barely begun to detect them. Detecting rogue planets is extraordinarily difficult. They emit no visible light of their own. They're too cold to glow in the optical range. They don't transit any star, so the transit method doesn't work. The primary detection method is gravitational microlensing. When a rogue planet passes between Earth and a distant background star, its gravity bends and amplifies the star's light in a characteristic way. The amplification is brief, lasting hours to days, and doesn't repeat, because the rogue planet is moving and won't pass in front of the same background star again. Each detection is a one-time event, a brief gravitational signature that tells us a planet-mass object passed through that region of space. Despite these challenges, astronomers have detected dozens of rogue planet candidates through microlensing surveys. The Roman Space Telescope, NASA's next major space observatory, is specifically designed to conduct a large-scale microlensing survey that could detect thousands of rogue planets, finally giving us a statistical picture of how common they are. But back to the question of whether rogue planets could be habitable. It sounds absurd. A planet with no star, no sunlight, no external energy source. How could anything live there? The answer lies in internal heat. Rocky planets generate heat through two mechanisms: the decay of radioactive elements in their interiors and the residual heat from their formation, when the kinetic energy of infalling material was converted to thermal energy. Earth still generates significant heat through both of these mechanisms. It's why the interior of our planet is molten, why we have plate tectonics, why volcanoes exist. For a rogue planet, that internal heat is the only heat source. A sufficiently large rocky rogue planet could maintain a warm interior for billions of years. And if that planet also has a thick hydrogen atmosphere, which some models suggest is possible, the atmosphere could act as a blanket, trapping the internal heat and maintaining surface temperatures above the freezing point of water. Liquid water on the surface of a planet with no star. Life, potentially, in the permanent darkness of interstellar space. This is speculative, but it's not wild speculation. The physics supports it, the conditions required are plausible, and given the potentially enormous number of rogue planets in the galaxy, even if only a tiny fraction of them have the right conditions, the absolute number of potentially habitable rogue planets could be significant. Now let's turn to another category of extreme world, the diamond planets. We touched on diamond rain inside gas giants in an earlier episode, but some planets may be made of diamond in a more fundamental sense. Carbon-rich stars, stars with a higher ratio of carbon to oxygen than our Sun, would produce carbon-rich planetary systems. In such systems, instead of the silicate rocks that make up Earth's mantle and crust, the dominant mineral might be silicon carbide or even pure carbon in its crystalline form. Diamond. A diamond planet would look nothing like Earth from the outside. Its surface, if it had one, might be covered in graphite, the same material as pencil lead, with diamond making up the deep interior. The geological processes on such a world would be completely different from anything we know. There would be no plate tectonics as we understand it, because the material properties of carbon minerals are different from silicates. Volcanism might produce carbon-rich lavas rather than the silicate lavas of Earth. The atmosphere, if any, might be rich in carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide. 55 Cancri E, which we mentioned in an earlier episode as a possible lava world, was at one point proposed as a diamond planet candidate based on early estimates of its host star's carbon-to-oxygen ratio. Later measurements revised those estimates, and the diamond planet hypothesis for 55 Cancri E is now considered less likely. But the concept remains valid. The right stellar composition would produce the right planetary composition, and diamond planets almost certainly exist somewhere in the galaxy. Then there are the pulsar planets, worlds orbiting the remnants of dead stars. Pulsars are neutron stars, the collapsed cores of massive stars that ended their lives in supernova explosions. They spin rapidly, emitting beams of radio waves that sweep across space like cosmic lighthouses. The environment around a pulsar is one of the most hostile in the universe. Intense radiation, powerful magnetic fields, and the constant bombardment of high-energy particles from the pulsar's wind. And yet planets orbit pulsars. The first exoplanets ever confirmed, before the famous discovery of 51 Pegasi b in 1995 that launched the modern era of exoplanet science, were 3 planets orbiting a pulsar called PSR 1257+12, discovered in 1992. These planets almost certainly didn't form around the pulsar directly. They likely formed around the original star before it went supernova, or they formed from the debris of the supernova itself. Either way, they survived. They orbit a dead star, bathed in radiation, in one of the most extreme environments we know of. If you've made it this far in the series, you already know that the universe doesn't play by our rules. It builds worlds in places we thought were impossible, under conditions we thought were lethal, at scales we thought were unreachable. Every new discovery in exoplanet science is a reminder that our intuitions about what's possible are shaped by the single planetary system we grew up in. And that single system is not a representative sample. the Milky Way contains hundreds of billions of planets. We've confirmed a little over 6,000. The ratio of what we know to what exists is humbling. We are at the very beginning of this story, and the chapters ahead, written by future telescopes, future missions, future generations of astronomers, will almost certainly contain discoveries that make everything we've found so far look like a prologue. The galaxy is stranger than we imagined. It is stranger than we can currently imagine. And that, more than anything else, is what makes this the most exciting time in the history of planetary science. Thank you for watching this series. If you've been here for all 5 episodes, you are exactly the kind of curious, engaged viewer that makes this channel worth building. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? If you've enjoyed this journey through the galaxy's most extreme worlds, please subscribe so you never miss what's coming next, and click on the video appearing on your screen right now. It's been chosen as the best next watch for you, and the universe still has so many more secrets to share. Stay curious, stay watching, and I'll see you in the next one.